Hello, everyone, and welcome to Follow Connect Live. Thank you all for joining. We have a dynamic presenter today, so just stay tuned as we get the preliminaries out of the way. Next slide, please. Follow is Florida's largest and longest established assisted living association. FALA has been providing advocacy, education, and regulatory support for more than 32 years now. Formed by the industry professionals to represent and serve the assisted living industry, which includes adult family care homes and assisted living facilities throughout Florida. Next, please. Our team is made up of myself, Tammy, Anna, Mary, and Emily, five dynamic women who are on a definite mission to serve as you, to be here for you, and to support you. Next. Ways to get involved from our members is to participate in local chapter meetings. We have chapters throughout Florida and they hold chapter meetings monthly. You can go to our website at www.fala.org and see the dates and times of our chapter meetings. And there's supporting roles in the chapter meetings that you can be a part of. You can speak, you can be a sponsor, and there's leadership positions that also you may qualify for. You can sign up for the various committees that FALA has. Again, by logging in to our www.fala.org committees/committees. And right now our most vigorous committee right now is the conference committee because we have an upcoming conference, August the 2nd through the 5th, at the JW Marriott in Orlando. If you haven't registered and you'd like to come, please go to that same website and register for our conference, JW Marriott, Bonner Creek, in Orlando. Our theme for this year is Passport to Possibility, Seniors Living with Purpose. We're all excited. We always say, this one is the best ever, but truly, I believe this one is the best ever. So don't miss out on our annual conference. I want to talk just briefly about our regulatory updates. The Memory Care Services License Bill have been signed by the governor. We are scheduled to meet with AHCA, the Agency for Healthcare Administration, on the 15th of this month, actually, but they have not given us a time yet to go over and talk about the rule. Because in that bill, it authorizes AHCA to promulgate a rule no later than July 1 of 2027. So we will be meeting with them, and there's more to come on that. Also, two rules in the making, 59A-36 and 59A-37.004 and 59A-36-009. Those are the do not resuscitate rule in ALFs and adult family care home. They are tweaking it, they're deleting, updating, and amending those rules, but they're not significant to cause you any heartburn. What I will advise you to do is look when the rules are finally promulgated. You need to review your do not resuscitate policy and procedure and make sure you tweak it accordingly. It should not be a whole lot you need to do, but there are some catchwords that you need to put in to your policies and procedure. Okay, next. Now it's time for our speaker, Mr. Keith Walls. Mr. Walls is he works senior planner at Palm Beach County Office of Emergency Management. He is the senior planner of the Palm Beach County Office of Emergency Management, where he has been a supportive staff and helping support healthcare facilities and vulnerable adults and residents in their home to prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies. He has served in 12 disaster responses and emergency operations centers across Florida in the last decade and was involved in some scene efforts for two healthcare facility evacuations in the last year. Attendees, I present to you Mr. Keith Walls.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to talk to you today about disaster preparedness. It is the third day of hurricane season, so I know how excited we all are for that. Probably a little nervous, a little worried how we're going to get ready for hurricane season. So I want to talk to you about hurricane preparedness and go beyond that for healthcare facilities. This presentation has been brought to you through the Florida Emergency Preparedness Association. So FALA reached out to FEPA. We all love our acronyms in government. And in healthcare, we love them too. So I'm just going to speak very briefly about FEPA and then roll directly into the conversation we're going to have together. Is the presentation sharing correctly?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right. So for nearly 7 decades, FEPA, the Florida Emergency Preparedness Association, has served as Florida's premier network for emergency managers. So the goal is to bring together all those people who serve people in planning for disasters. The mission of Florida Emergency Preparedness Association is to provide an educational network between emergency managers and their partners at the federal, state, county, municipal, tribal, volunteer, and private industry level on critical emergency management issues. And if you are the administrator for your facility, congratulations. One of the many hats you wear is that of the facility's emergency manager as you plan for and care for the safety of your residents and staff. Our vision is to foster a community of emergency management professionals from all sectors to come together, learn, share, and support each other, just as we're coming together today to work with FALA to support your efforts. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this conversation. I work out of Palm Beach County, but I want to speak to you a little bit about our experience, my experience, and how this is going to impact you regardless of where you are in the state of Florida. Here in Palm Beach County, we shape around 12 core hazards. We do that hazard vulnerability analysis every year, just like you do as part of your plan, and we've grouped the things that we worry about into natural hazards, technological hazards, and human-caused hazards. So, of course, natural hazards, the ones we all get the most excited about. So let's dive through a couple of those. Severe weather. So it's hurricane season, so let's talk about what a hurricane is. A hurricane is a large, rotating storm that forms over warm waters in tropical areas with high wind speeds. So that's anything equal to or greater than 74 miles per hour. Those are pretty scary. Now, let's not negate the smaller storms. Tropical storms, which range between 39 and 73 miles per hour, can really impact a facility. And tropical depressions can have wind speeds up to 38 miles per hour. Hurricane season starts on June 1st. And runs through November 30th. Now, remember, it doesn't have to be a hurricane to ruin your day. And it doesn't matter what the forecast says. If it says that this is going to be a busy year or a slow year, it doesn't matter. The storm that hits you is going to give your facility a busy year. So be prepared regardless of what the forecast is currently saying. Now, hurricanes are dangerous for many reasons. So one of the biggest things is storm surge. So you've got to understand that storm surge is not a wave pushing water up onto the beach. It's the ocean in its entirety being shifted onto land. The amount and volume of water can be hard to rationalize. This is a huge atmospheric wave pressing all of the ocean yards of height of water inland. So even if your facility is elevated, is in a safe location, and doesn't need to evacuate, what would you do if this was the view outside of your facility's window? Are you prepared, even if the building is safe, to continue operating in this environment for an extended period of time? Storm surge is the most dangerous part of a storm. You can hide from the wind, but you got to run from the water. So speaking of that water, this can be dangerous even in smaller rainstorms. We saw what happened to Fort Lauderdale and the impact of a couple days of heavy rain can completely shut down a larger community. And it doesn't take that much water. 6 inches of water is enough to make you unstable on your feet. 12 inches of water, a foot, can carry away the average car. Even large trucks, SUVs, and vans can be swept away by 1.5 to 2 feet of water. Once you get to the point that you can't see through the bottom of that water, it is too dangerous for you to enter. It is too dangerous for you to drive through, and you're better off staying put than putting yourself or your residents into danger. Now, it's been a while since Florida has really worried about forest fires, but if we can think back to '98 and the wildfire season that year, that changed the way a lot of us think about Florida and wildfires. It's a natural phenomenon, and it's necessary. We need burns. We need to manage the undergrowth in our forests. But people sometimes forget how rural Florida really is and how important it is that we have these greenways. But those greenways can burn. And if we delay those burns, we end up with large wildfires. This typically peaks in May to June. Boy, is it hot and humid out now. If it started burning, how hard would it be to put that out now? So not to scare everyone, but I want to take a moment to talk about communicable diseases. We have all had COVID beaten into us and our plans for a long time. But that's not the only communicable disease that has a huge impact on long-term care facilities. Every year, seasonal flu, huge impact. And there are always new novel germs cropping up that can cause an impact on our facilities. So we've got to take the hard-fought lessons learned of the past outbreaks that we've had, the COVID, bird flu, and other illnesses, and continue those protective measures. The same tools work regardless of the germ. So if we're proactive, we can mitigate the impact of communicable disease on our facilities. Now, let's slip into technological hazards. Some of these things may not be as readily apparent to you, but they have a huge impact on your facility. So here in Palm Beach County, everyone thinks about the urban corridor of Palm Beach County, but we are over 2/3 rural. We have an international airport, a massive seaport, 2 major highways, and 5 different rail providers operating in our county. That commerce brings with it a lot of hazardous materials, a lot of transportation movement. And when I plan for the most vulnerable residents in my community, I think about what impacts them most. And after power, transportation is the biggest thing I worry about. What will you do when you can't move patients, staff, or resources? As part of writing our comprehensive emergency management plans, one of the questions that's asked of us is what major transportation arteries wrap around your facility? The language the state provides on some of the planning language is a little difficult, but if you can figure out what major roads surround your facility and what moves on those roads, you'll have a better idea of what hazards and interruptions to transportation are possible that impact your facility. Let's dive a little more specifically into hazmat. So we use hazardous materials every day. It's a part of our life. Hazardous materials are really important to us. What are cleaning chemicals but hazardous materials? They're just hazardous to germs. So you have these hazmat materials in your facility. You may have hazmat in businesses nearby. It's important to understand, what do you have on site? How do you manage that? How much awareness do you have of what businesses have regarding hazardous materials within 1, 3, and 5 mile radiuses of your facility? And for all the assisted living facilities out there, you have 48 to 96 hours of fuel on site. That stuff can be dangerous. How are you keeping safe? How are you planning for and minimizing the risk of hazardous materials? Now, let's talk very briefly about nuclear power plants. The chances of something going wrong in a nuclear power plant are extremely unlikely. These power plants exercise annually. They do a lot of great work to make sure that there is no impact. But it could happen. So we always plan. And what we do in emergency management is we worry. If you're the kind of person who's an anxious individual, you can turn that anxious energy into disaster preparedness and make your comprehensive emergency management plan that much stronger. So as an assisted living facility, you're required to know how far you are from the nearest nuclear power plant. Are you in the evacuation zone? Are you in the 50-mile ingestion pathway zone? Is it further from you than that? So it's helpful to know. And if you haven't been able to figure this information out, your local emergency management agency can usually guide you to figure out how far you are from the nearest plant. Continuing back onto water, but from a man-made perspective, here in Palm Beach County, we worry about the Herbert Hoover Dike. So if the dike were to break, it would be like a toddler breaking the bathtub and sending a wave of water through the rest of the house. The impact could be substantial. So do you have flood insurance on your property? Are you confident that you have specific flood insurance protections separate from homeowners, business, property insurance? What are the risks to your property from floods? So is it dikes? Is it rivers? Back in 2024, we had a lot of healthcare facilities get impacted by riverline flooding. So the hurricanes came, they were minimally impacted. Days later, all the floodwaters crept down through the various rivers and tributaries that cross Florida. And now that water rises and collects in basins that normally don't hold so much water. And now inland communities become islands. How do you manage that? Now let's talk a little bit more about specific human-made hazards. And we're really only going to focus on one that I want you to think about today. So the rising prevalence of work and school violence. It's an unfortunate reality that we have to face, that there may be violence or conflict in our facilities, in our communities. It's important to work with your local law enforcement to understand what the risks are in your community and what actions you can take to mitigate it. But it's very important to think about how you're protecting your staff and residents, be it from outsiders, someone who is an angry employee, or otherwise. You've got to be thinking about what are the risks to your facility. And so now that we've kind of talked about these core hazards, I want to remind you all to go back to your comprehensive emergency management plans, think about your hazard vulnerability analysis, and are you targeting the things that are relevant to your facility, or are you just going off of the stock list? And that might be a great place to start. But as your facility operates over time, you know your vulnerabilities best. And maybe you've just become aware of new vulnerabilities that you haven't thought about. So now that you put that together, we are going to talk about preparedness. How do we manage the stuff? So we're going to model this conversation off of the ready.gov model. So make a plan, build a kit, get involved, be informed. Well, all of this, while it's applicable to us as individuals, also is applicable to our facilities. So let's bring that together. Let's talk about that plan. So the Agency for Healthcare Administration has set up clear minimum planning requirements for healthcare facilities to write comprehensive emergency management plans. It's important that you write a plan that meets your facility's needs. The regulation is the floor. So don't stop at the minimum and write something that serves your needs. I often talk to my facility administrators about their CMP as if it's a living will or advanced directives that ensures that the facility carries out the actions with the intention the administrator sets. And with that, you must exercise your plan to make sure that your results match the intentions that you set for your staff and for your response. Evacuation takes a long time. If you have not been at a healthcare facility for a full evacuation, it is hard to share what it takes to pack up an entire world and bring it with you to a new facility. As a healthcare facility, you cannot wait for official evacuation orders to begin moving. I'm showing you here just a little bit of footage of one of our major roads, trying to get people to the highway so they can evacuate up north. Do you want to be in this environment with your clients moving? Are you prepared to care for your clients in this kind of traffic? So think about how you move patients day to day, what kind of community outreach or just like day out events you host, and how much time it takes to load healthy, active clients onto vehicles without all of their possessions, move them to another location, unload them. How would that be aggravated by a facility that's maybe not running at 100% capacity, and how much time it will take to move your clients? And if you're dependent on transportation providers, are you evacuating at the same time everyone else is? Will your vendor be there? So think about how long your evacuation is going to take and when you need to make those decisions as the administrator to move quickly, move safely, and minimize the time you spend in transition. So we want to avoid having the residents sitting in cars, buses, or vans for extended period, and make this as simple of a trip as possible. So going on to the plan, it's very important that we are registered in the health facility reporting system. So all residential licensees must report their emergency status to the Agency for Healthcare Administration through the health facility reporting system. So I'm going to encourage you right now that it is so important that you become confident in completing and updating your facility profile. If you've activated your plan, you want to be providing daily updates to ACA. If you are in an emergency and you're so busy that you can't put in information, reach out to FALA. I know they have staff that have been very proactive, very clear about advocating that they will support you with getting your information in, because if you don't provide information and you don't ask for help, help can't come. So please make sure that you prioritize this information. So you built this plan, it's great. Who have you told to your plan about? Have you talked to your staff? Do you do training on what's involved? How do you exercise your emergency communication? So I'm going to tell you a way that I tell my facilities to make this so much easier. Your emergency communication should mirror your daily communication. Use the same tools in an emergency that you use day to day. So that means if you say you're going to use call them all, texting, alert and notification tools, use those to provide staff updates. Use those to provide information to family members, clients, and everyone involved. Every communication can be an exercise if you're using the same process that you do in an emergency. And if you're doing the same thing in blue skies as you do in gray skies, it's so much easier. So we're going to build a kit. So we always know as individuals, we've got to put together kits, everything we need for ourselves, our loved ones, for our cats and dogs and our goldfish, and any special needs members of our family, that we have all those resources together. So what does that look like for a facility? Well, I need you to visualize taking everything you need to run the facility, pack it up in a box, and take it with you. What legal and medical records need to stay with the residents? How are you managing all of the paperwork on top of the people, the stuff, the medications, the consumable medical supplies that you're going to need? And then how are you addressing personal items? How are you packaging up the individual client supplies that you've identified in your plan need to come with you? And so this is not just care, this is also clothing and comfort. Make sure that the things your residents need to be independent, to stay well, come with them on that evacuation. And if part of your plan is how do you stay put, do you have special kits put together for staying put if you don't evacuate? Next, I want to encourage you to get involved. You got to help your staff before, during, and after an emergency to be prepared. If your staff are confident and they're prepared, they know what they're doing, they know their families are taken care of, they're going to show up. If your staff are worried about themselves, worried about their family, they are not going to arrive at the facility. It doesn't matter what form you make them sign, what pledge they promise. If your staff aren't ready for the emergency, they will not be there when you need them. So help them prepare. Collect supplies for emergency kits. Even if you need to get contractors to help them install shutters, help them clean up their homes afterwards, anything you can do to keep them happy and focused on the work environment is going to make them better doing their jobs and taking care of their staff. The work you do is so important, and the work your staff do is so important that you need to support them so that they can be more focused. It's a lot easier to get handymen to come than it is to find clinicians. So know where their families are going. Are their families going to go to your local hurricane shelter? Do they have special needs members of their family? Are those members of their family that are special needs registered for their local special needs shelter? Now, we know facilities cannot evacuate to hotels, they cannot evacuate to shelters, but when you're planning for your staff, if you don't have the capacity to bring their families into the facility with you, maybe making sure that they know where to go to be safe can just add to their comfort, add to their personal preparedness. And then after the storm, check on your neighbors, check on your staff, help get them back to normal so that they can focus on patient care. Now, let's get involved in our local healthcare coalition. So FALA does a lot of awesome stuff for you, but you also have these local healthcare coalitions that are equally valuable. So across Florida, there are a number of healthcare coalitions. Down here in South Florida, they tend to be one county per coalition. In the rest of the state, these are large multi-county areas. And this is a great place to go to participate in exercises that will broaden your perspectives. Here in Palm Beach County, we include long-term care as well as community-based providers in our exercises. Our hospitals need you to have a place for their clients to go as they begin to step down, recover from care, and move into the right place for their journey in life. And even our community-based providers have really important services to make sure that if someone is leaving long-term care for home, for example, for hospice, or someone who needs durable medical equipment, that everyone understands what each other are doing. Disaster response is an intricate dance. You need to know the steps, and the best way to know the steps to that waltz, to be part of that dance. So get involved and know who your local partners are. I also want to encourage you to be informed. So with the changes that we have seen to the ALF criteria in 2023, we know that you now need to register for any county-run alert and notification system. So pretty much every county has alert, insert county name here, or comparable named tool. It's all provided under a platform known as Everbridge or Alert Florida. Register for that, have documentation of that registration, and have it as part of your plan. But have your staff involved in that too. It's not about checking the box. It's making sure that you are getting information when you need it. Get to know your state and local emergency management agencies. What's your relationship with your local emergency management agency? So we are more than just the people who review your plan. We coach you through implementing your plan and providing support when gaps form between planning and reality. You're always going to be happier working with us than having ACA on site when an emergency comes, because we're here to make sure that you take care of your residents and stay independent. At this point, I'd like to spend some time talking about emergency environmental control plans and why they matter. So, maintaining resident safety during power failure is really critical. Emergency environmental control plan requirements really got strengthened after the lessons learned from Hurricane Irma. We saw the initial rule created in 2017 and then hardened in 2018. And a lot of facilities that have been around a long time are operating under grandfathered emergency power plan rules. And anytime you make any changes to the generator, anytime you make any changes to the fuel system, you got to go through the process again. And you need to be able to sustain safe operations for 96 hours without grid power. That's a lot. But that's not just being able to run the AC for 4 days. That's 4 days of time to plan your next move. What are you going to do if the power doesn't come back on? What are you going to do if you can't maintain the environment? So part of that 96 hours is buying you time to plan your decision making. So for what comes next. Healthcare facilities should plan for hurricanes, but you should not plan as though hurricanes are the main threat. Assisted living facilities have very specific disaster planning requirements stemming from 59A/36.025 of Florida Administrative Code and local requirements. Adult family care homes can use these same standards to guide their planning. CEMPs, the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plans, are not hurricane preparedness plans and should be written for an all hazards approach. So while I was brought in to talk about hurricanes, I think it's important to broaden your perspective and think about all the hazards that come up, even when it's not a hurricane. So what does that mean for your facility? So here in Palm Beach County, we plan for these 12 core hazards, and I mentioned how we group them into natural, technological, and human-caused hazards. Planning for an all hazards approach means planning for emergencies that you can anticipate. Hurricanes are kind of great. You know they're coming. You get a decent amount of warning. But it's the emergencies that you can't anticipate. Fire, power failure, air conditioning failure that can really scare you. They can rattle you because you don't get that advance warning. So while a lot of attention is rightly given to planning for the largest emergencies and those where outside support can be expected, is your facility preparing for the small and medium scale emergencies where impact is hard to measure? So emergency environmental control plans have been given an area of great focus in recent years. We can all picture the challenges of providing care and maintaining a safe environment for our residents in a power failure. have a plan in place for this. While hurricanes are a big risk to long-term care, the everyday emergencies are what can really take you out of business. In the last year, I've supported 4 long-term care facilities who experienced heat emergencies. So they never started their backup generators. They had power, the generator was fueled, maintained, ready to go, but plant failures, air conditioning breakdowns, and increased cooling demand in hot and humid days can take even a functioning facility to its knees. Of these 4 facilities I supported, 2 completed full evacuations. Again, functioning generators, full fuel tanks, full grid power. One of these facilities remains unoccupied a year later. A few common elements came up in these encounters that provide valuable lessons to your plants, and we're going to go through those together now. So, running away with the mouse. Fuel planning and resilience gaps. So a lot of EECPs that I review are really focused on a hurricane-only outage scenarios, but it's environmental control. That's why they changed the name from emergency power plan to emergency environmental control. Focus on the environment and sustaining that environment. On-site fueling capacity and refueling contracts. If you are a small mom and pop ALF, I get that you can't keep 96 hours of fuel. You can operate with that 48 hours of fuel on site. But now, can you trust that your refueling contract will take care of you? A hurricane has passed potentially, or even if a hurricane hasn't passed, there may be a surge in fuel demand. Are you confident that that pinky promise that you made will get you the fuel you need? And again, that 96 hours is just buying you time to prepare for the next step in the process. So let's talk about some lessons learned from those facility experiences. There's so much we can learn from failure, so much that we can learn from trying, of coming up with new approaches and seeing what works. So these 4 facilities experienced heat emergencies without losing grid power. 2 of them conducted full-scale evacuations. And like I said, one of them still remains unoccupied to this day. And heat emergencies can disable operations faster than a storm can. There are a couple key elements that come together that we're going to talk about specifically on heat emergencies. And these are deferred maintenance, heat creep in facilities, making decisions in emergency, gaps in information sharing, why writing a good plan matters, evacuation and repatriation to residents. Then I'm going to take a moment to summarize all of this and then, create space for us to talk and have a discussion about this potentially. So it's really expensive. The cost in time and capital to maintain or adequately repair chillers and air conditioners is enormous. Things are getting more expensive. Maintenance is getting deferred. We're doing everything we can to keep businesses successful. If you're not successful, you're not going to operate. So we know that this is the reality. So if that deferred maintenance gets stretched out too long, this can put you in a vulnerable situation. This is a hazard that may be one of your core hazards to consider. Heat creep in facility temperature can lead to evacuation. So this can happen a couple ways. Losing cooling capacity or capability on a particularly hot day can take your facility down. Even a day with lots of prop doors. Let's say you have a really fun family event and you've got people coming and going. If the doors are open a lot, all that hot, humid air is coming into the building, sucking your air conditioning out. That's adding a lot of heat load to your building, making it harder for your ACs to run. And it could take a little bit of deferred maintenance here, a little bit of a very hot day, a little bit of extra open doors because we're doing a spring cleaning, and now you may push your system past its limit. So if this happens, it's possible that the rapid introduction of temporary cooling capability may stop failure. So you can bring in coolers, spot coolers, temporary external chillers, and basically portable air conditioners to your building to make up for that loss in cooling capability. But once the building starts heating up, you are likely heading for an evacuation unless you can bring in enough cooling to replace all of the cooling capability that you lost. Now, it's not just air conditioning. It's not about cold air. Loss of cooling is loss of environmental control. Humidity starts building up. You end up with slippery floors, a dangerous environment. You have respiratory complications. You have the fact that every piece of paper in your building now starts curling up. Humidity and environmental control is a huge part of this. So how do we manage heat creep in a facility? Well, everyone loves spot coolers, but you see that big thing in the background? It's a portable air conditioner. That one thing in a parking spot outside your building might cool down a small wing of your facility. It may cool down many bedrooms. Spot coolers are really good when you have a room that is hot. Spot coolers blow cold air out one side, and then they push hot air out the other. If you have a spot cooler inside your building and it's venting into the false ceiling, you're not really cooling the building. You're just adding more hot air into the building, heating it up further in exchange for blowing a little bit of cold air across individuals. So they are basically big fans in that situation. So what contracts do you have in place to bring in spot coolers and external cooling? One thing I saw at one of my evacuations that just opened my eyes was the fact that the facility baked into their maintenance contract emergency cooling. So when they called their AC vendor, the same time that technicians were showing up to fix the problem, spot coolers were rolling in. Bringing in that cooling early kept the building from getting too hot, and it bought them time to make corrections. Can you bring in an external chiller or other cooling capacity? Who could you rent from? All of the places that you think about that you would rent heavy equipment from, that you see trucks coming from, a lot of these places will rent you car size, truck size, portable air conditioners. And it will run on a generator. It sits outside your building. You hook it up to the windows, and it will bring the chill into the building. And yes, it's expensive, but external coolers are cheap compared to evacuating your facility or closing your facility. Can you also think about what can you do to reduce the amount of space you need to cool? What services can you shut down that generate heat? Can you consolidate your residents into smaller spaces? So it's very easy to write a plan for power outage, but what are you doing with the people in the place, and how are you managing the amount of space that you have to cool? So once we have an emergency, we start freaking out. We get stressed. We're like, oh my gosh, how do I deal with all of this? As humans, we deal with emergencies. We deal with stress in one of two ways. We respond by the training we have and the built-in rigor that we have accumulated through our professionalism, or we get stressed and we make quick decisions. So there's a couple patterns that I've seen that I want to communicate to you. Many facilities write plans assigning all responsibilities to the administrator or an unnamed designee. When you're trying to write a plan that's compliant, it's great to say this responsibility will be fulfilled by the administrator or their alternate. Great, yes, it checks a box. But when everything is going to the administrator or their alternate, there's still one person. So you're creating a single point of failure where all decisions are leading onto a person. At the same time, you will often see facilities that have very large staff, but very flat organizational charts. If you have a buck stops here mindset, there's the possibility you are making yourself into the bottleneck, where you have chosen to take on all the decisions when you may have taken the time to hire very talented and capable individuals to support you. Give them some of that decision-making load. Let things split up. Now, even the most well-intentioned person with all of the skills and knowledge cannot make all these decisions. So what happens? Decisions slow down. So delayed decision-making costs lives and money. Lives are more important. We can always make more money if we can't bring people back. So making decisions quickly is really important. Trust your staff, rehearse these activities, and you're going to feel more confident in an emergency. Gaps in information sharing. So one of the significant contrasts between success and failure for the facilities that I supported was communication. And basically two big questions came to mind. And the first one, from my perspective as an emergency manager, was how did the emergency rise up to emergency management's notice? Did the facility notify ACA? Did they call emergency management? Did they make a call to 911? Sometimes facilities called 911, called emergency management. They wrote in their plan that they're going to communicate with emergency management. So they did. They called us. We showed up. We had a digital copy of their CEMP in hand. And we just sort of acted as advocate or, coach, reminding them what they wrote in their book, asking them about how they're resolving problems, and talking them through the process. Because at the end of the day, we want you to take care of yourselves. We never want to put you in a situation where you are publicizing So we don't want to put you in the situation where you're giving up control of your private business to the government. The moment we come in, make decisions for you, take over, move your patients, you no longer exist as a business. This is now a public problem, and you never want your business to fall into that situation. So it's much better to talk to us and help us be your advocate, your support, your mentor in the corner. So with this, it comes down to is what is the facility's ability and readiness to ask for help? No one, especially if you are a high-performing individual, you don't like asking for help. It's just, how you are. It's how high performers work. But having the mindset and the openness and sometimes the humility to say, hey, I need a hand, give me some help, can bring in that support. On the other end, we've seen facilities where the first notification we got was because a fist fight was occurring over access to an air conditioner in a facility because they wanted that one cold seat. At that point, the emergency was already well under, and there's only so much we can do to support you, and the biggest thing we can support you with is getting your residents to a safe location. So facilities requesting help benefited from a more developed decision-making process and were able to take an off-ramp from the rising emergency situation. Delayed communication delays help, and that increases the cost of the incident. If your AC has just gone down and the building is cold, there's a lot you can do to solve that problem quickly and cheaply. Once the building starts heating up, it's a lot harder to reverse that. So with that, we have to think about what does evacuation and repatriation of the facility residents look like? If you have not been part of a facility evacuation, I strongly encourage you to reach out and find administrators who've gone through evacuations and hear their story. Their journey is gold. They already went through the suffering, learn from what they've experienced, and see what it would take. Exercise your plan. And just like with communication, you can exercise your plan in day-to-day operations. Taking the entire facility out for an Italian dinner or trip to the movie theater can give you a pretty good idea of the headache of just moving your residents. Now, while your residents are out enjoying a wonderful meal and a movie, have your staff exercise, packing up the supplies, seeing what it would take. Go through the process of emulating and figuring out what it would take to move out. And moving out might not mean leaving the facility. It might mean compartmentalizing, evacuating internally, and reducing the footprint of your facility. How are you going to increase staffing? Once you begin evacuation, you now have staff in the facility taking care of residents. You have staff that need to go with the residents on that evacuation. So this means if you have buses, you have nurses on those buses taking care of the residents. If you're a small facility and you're transporting in your own or staff cars, you have a driver, and they're going to do nothing but drive. You're going to have residents in the back seat, and then you're going to have an aide or nurse in the car with them. Whoever is driving is not providing care, support, or supervision to the residents. And then you have staff that are going to be at the destination. So you have to really increase the amount of staff on site to make that evacuation successful. Now, once you've evacuated, everything has calmed down and the facility has been stabilized. What is the process for repatriating your residents and getting them back in? Think about the paperwork it involves to get them transferred, to deal with the costs, the insurance elements of this movement. Sometimes these patients may move and not want to come back. And how does that affect your ability to operate when you permanently lose census? It's important to think about transportation, the process of restoring your facility, and exercising resident movement. All of these are things that are at least worth talking about, if not doing as functional exercises. So, to summarize, I think it's important to remember deferred maintenance is going to increase the risks of a cooling system failure. AC costs in terms of time and money to get them repaired can really cripple your operation. If you have a plant, getting those parts in could add days to your emergency. Loss of cooling tonnage, or I should say loss of cooling capability, can trigger a failure even without a full plant failure. This could be losing a lot of room AC units. It could be a reduction in your ability to cool. And it can be heat creep. Just, it's really hot out. You got a lot of windows open. You've got a lot of people moving in and out. That just brings more heat into the building and makes that AC work harder. And all of these things can come together to create failure. Temporary cooling may not be able enough to offset rising heat once that failure begins. Once the temperature starts rising, you are buying time to evacuate. Spot coolers can worsen the situation if you aren't venting their heat outside of the building. So, CMP guy, why are you talking to us about all of this? So, I want to show you where writing a good CMP matters. The CMP needs to be a real document providing intention of action, and it's got to be meaningful and operational. Writing a book for compliance is the first step. Writing a plan that tells the story of how you want your facility to survive all sorts of emergencies is what it's all about. Prioritizing compliance over effective response is basically planning for failure. Planning process and exercising the plan leads to meaningful outcomes. I'm the first person to tell you that your physical CMP is going to be most valuable for creating a cool ramp to push Matchbox cars off of, or balancing a wobbly table in your facility's lunchroom. The process of writing your plan, developing your plan, talking about your plan, exercising your plan, that's what really matters. So, as much as I've been here to worry you, I really want to help remind you that worrying now will prevent an emergency later, will minimize the impact of an emergency. Get to know your local emergency management agency, get to know all of your neighbors. Who do you partner with, and how do you make your operations a success? So I want to thank you all for your time. I am excited for the work that all of you do to provide a safe and meaningful place for some of our most vulnerable residents in the state. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for listening to me. If you have any questions, I would be delighted to take them. And Fala, thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Keith. Excellent, excellent. Although I hear, some emergency preparedness, but every time I learn something different that need to be done. So it was great, great, great presentation. So Emily, do we have any questions for Keith in the chat?
Not currently, but if anyone has one, feel free to put them in there. You could use the Q&A or the chat, whatever you prefer. Give it a few.
It was a great reminder of the spot cooler. I kind of thought otherwise, but you corrected my myth that I had about a spot cooler. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Spot coolers are an awesome tool. I don't want to scare people away from using them. I just want you to encourage you to use them. It's like medication. You use it according to the label.
Right.
So I've seen large spot coolers brought in by maintenance contractors, and they hook them up with panels to your windows. And those spot coolers just blow cold air in, and they pump heat out of your building. But I've also seen facilities put a spot cooler in a hallway and blow cold air down one way and hot air down the other. And let me tell you, making cold air creates a lot of heat, and it just adds it into the building.
Yeah.
And I think there is so much demand for spot coolers in an emergency that facilities are going to be fighting against every other business to get access to them. But if you start looking at some of the companies, and I'm not going to make an endorsement of any particular brand, but every major rental firm provides rental coolers, rental air conditioners, and rental chillers. And each of those is different. The small facilities are going to use spot coolers, larger facilities are going to use chillers, and everyone can use portable air conditioners. But filling up a parking spot or two with a really big temporary air conditioner is going to cost a lot of money up front, but it's going to be very affordable compared to ceasing operations in the long term. And there's less competition for them.
Yeah, thank you for that. Emily, any questions?
Nope. All we've got is thank you, well presented.
Well, that means that Keith did an outstanding job, which I can attest to just by being on here with him. So Keith, we want to thank you so very much for accepting our invitation and giving us such an informative presentation. This is the time of year where we need to know and be reminded of what we thought we knew, because it's not time to try to learn something when we got a hurricane or another type of disaster hanging over us. So we thank you so very much. And one of these days, next year, we might call upon you again, Keith.
It would be my pleasure to support you.
Thank you so very much.
We did just get a quick question. They asked, I just attended a local CEMP meeting yesterday and was told we contract with a hotel for evacuation. Is that correct or accurate information?
So here in Palm Beach County, we specifically require all assisted living facilities to have a minimum of 2 mutual aid agreements. So one, this ensures that if everyone needs an agreement, you will have partners to work with. We also encourage you to have one that's nearby for day-to-day emergencies and one that's 5 miles down the road for bigger emergencies. I also want you to think about if you had to surge your census by 50%, that's what you'd be looking at if you had 2 mutual aid agreements. So having more agreements means being able to split your clients up further, and it's easier to surge a facility by 10 or 20% than otherwise. I will tell you that I was in a workshop down in Broward County where ACA spoke, and they were very clear that you need to evacuate to licensed facilities. So the rule is ALFs go into ALFs. ALFs can go up in criteria. They cannot go down in criteria. I have heard of a few situations where facilities have been permitted to evacuate to a hotel. This used to be common a long time ago, but I want you to think about what it would be involved to provide care to your residents in a hotel setting and the impact it would have on the hotel. So even when these evacuations have taken place, the hotels have often reneged on these contracts because there is the cost to them and the disruption that they're not used to, the impact of having. I would tell you that if you are in a situation where you may need to, and I'll tell you here in Palm Beach County, we have over 380 long-term care facilities, so we have a lot more capacity. But I've also spent a lot of time in Dixie County, and there's not a single licensed long-term care facility in the entire county, so they don't have options. So you need to talk to your area office from ACA and get written approval to do a evacuation agreement to a hotel, because it is so outside of the norm that I would want to protect myself and my business, a written approval to vary from what is the norm. And that's the best way to protect yourself and your residents. You're very welcome. And if you're looking to get a hold of me, I'll put my email in chat. I can speak to what Palm Beach County does, and I can speak to some general sessions. I'm here on behalf of FEPA because I am the co-chair of the Health and Medical Working Group, where we talk a lot about plan review and try to make sure that we're being fair and consistent on how plans are done. But I really would encourage you to find your local version of me and get to know us, because we should be your best friend. We shouldn't be your enemy. It's not fun to go through the adversarial process of CMP compliance, but we want you to spar with us so that you have a good plan, so that when the emergency happens, you're prepared. And when the regulators come in, they have confidence in your plan. So it's always better to fight with us than to get into a fight with ACA.
Again, thank you. And I totally agree with your response about the question about going to the hotel. Spot on answer. I don't know, Emily, anything else?
You better grab Keith
while he's on here.
I know. I'm like, hurry up. Okay, we have one more. It says, if we add additional mutual aid agreement after we have submitted our CEMP plan and it has been approved, does that matter? Or if our vendors change, how do we update that?
Okay, great question. This is a little complex. So since 2023, and ACA in their generosity have bestowed upon us a new criteria on Thanksgiving Day 2023. It's the best Thanksgiving present ever. So they tried to give us a definition for what they call substantial change. So I'm going to give you this statement because it's going to help answer that question. If you have a change of ownership, change of administrator, or substantial changes to the way your plan executes, you need to go through the process of submitting and getting your plan approved. So if the way you're handling your emergency changes because you are adding an additional vendor, I would have that conversation with emergency management and let them tell you in writing, do or do not submit for revision. Let them help you measure that substantial change. If I'm looking at a mom and pop facility and they go from 2 agreements to 3 agreements, I would want to be involved in that conversation with them and have them go through the substantial change, because that is a world of a change to them. If I'm looking at a corporate facility that just opened another franchise, let's say, franchise is the wrong word, I apologize, but they opened up another sister location, that's a drop in the bucket to their capability. So I wouldn't consider that a substantial change for them. And then ACA is always going to be very deferential to facilities that have been in communication and coordination with their local emergency management agency. And if they see that the ACA regulator feels that this should have been a substantial change, but the facility was told in writing, thank you for this update, this doesn't need to go through the review process again, I can't imagine them being harsh about that.
Okay. Anything else, Emily?
As of right this second, there are no more questions.
Well,
there comes one.
There's come one.
It says, and also whoever just asked this, can you put your name in the chat too? But the question is, do you find that having an automatic backup generator substantially helps?
Yes. So here's the thing. I go through a lot of these emergency environmental control plans. Do you know how a generator works? If you don't know how a generator works, you want the thing to do the working for you. So if you have an automatic transfer switch, so an automatic generator basically just means you have a generator, it's permanently on a slab, and when the power goes out, it switches over, and that's great. And you need someone who knows how to manually switch it over in case something goes wrong, because I'll tell you, automatic transfer switches fail. They're partially made of plastic, and we live in Florida, and we know what happens to outdoor plastic. I would not want to have a generator that isn't on an automatic transfer switch, especially if it's permanently installed.
Okay. Okay.
I think we're done with questions.
Okay. Again, Keith, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
A wealth of information. And I will say it's my belief that everybody on this call really, really were reminded or got invaluable information to help them in their facilities and adult family care homes. I certainly got some different information as well. So I really, really, really thank you. And again, Paula may be calling you again next year.
We are all here to support each other. This is
absolutely we are. We are. And I'm seeing some messages like, thank you, well done. And it was a well done presentation. So with that being said, we're going to say goodbye to everyone. And thanks so much for your participation. Oh, wait, before we go, talk about the drawing.
Thanks, Alberta. Yes, the door prize drawing for a $100 Visa gift card this month. That goes to David Saunders, Barrington Terrace at Fort Myers. So congratulations, David. I'll send you an email shortly to confirm it and verify where you want that sent.
Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations, David. Congratulations. And with that said, we're going to say goodbye to everyone. Have a rest of a good day and good week. And we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Britannia, I'll look into that. You'll get a survey for this session. Once the survey is completed, then the certificates will be made. So give me a little bit, but stay tuned for the survey.